One of my subscribers, David, reached out and shared his real-life experience with Mia Thanksgiving. He says changed his family forever. What started as a quiet holiday gathering turned into the moment he realized his daughter's marriage was already falling apart. I stood in my dining room in Portland, watching red wine spread across the hardwood. Floor-like blood and thick crystal shards of my grandmother's wineglass scattered at my feet. That's when I knew my daughter's marriage was over. The glass had missed my head by only a few inches. Derek, my son-in-law, stood across from me, rocking slightly on his feet. His face was flushed not only from the Pinot Noir he'd been drinking since 2 in the afternoon, but from pure simmering anger. Behind him, my daughter Sarah looked ghostly pale, her hands frozen halfway to her lips as if she couldn't decide whether to speak or cover her mouth. It was Thanksgiving. The turkey was sitting on the table, slowly going cold, but this didn't. Begin with a thrown wine glass. Started 3 hours earlier, when Sarah called and asked if she and Derek could come over for Thanksgiving dinner. Something about her voice immediately unsettled me. It was too cheerful, too controlled-like. She was following lines someone else had written for her. Still, I told her yes. Of course, Sarah is my only child, and since my wife, Margaret, passed away 2 years ago after a long battle with cancer, the holidays had already lost their familiar shape. Margaret used to cook everything herself. 4 days before Thanksgiving, the house would be filled with the smell of sage, butter, and roasting vegetables. This year, I ordered most of the food from a local restaurant, just trying to survive the day without staring too long at the empty chair where she used to sit. Sarah and Derek arrived exactly on time. The moment Derek walked in, he went straight to my bar cart without asking and poured himself a heavy drink. 3 fingers of bourbon. That alone wasn't surprising anymore. Over the past year, I'd watched his drinking escalate. Bud used to be a single glass of wine with dinner had turned into afternoon drinking. Then constant refills at every family gathering. Sarah kissed my cheek hello. I noticed she'd layered extra makeup around her eyes. When I hugged her, she felt lighter than she had just a month ago. She'd always been small, but now I could feel the sharp outline of her ribs beneath her sweater. Derek dropped into Margaret's chair. I hadn't moved it, hadn't marked it or said anything about it. No one had sat there since she died. Not me, not Sarah, not any guest who'd come over since. It was an unspoken rule, but Derek sprawled in it now, loosening his tie, with one hand while lifting his drink with the other. Sarah glanced at me, her eyes apologetic, then quickly looked away and busied herself in the kitchen, insisting on helping even though there was almost nothing to do. Besides reheating food and setting platters out, dinner was filled with forced small talk. Derek controlled the conversation, mostly ranting about his job at a tech startup downtown. His boss was clueless. His coworkers were idiots. The company was doomed because no one listened to him. It was the same speech he'd been giving for a year and a half. Sarah barely touched her food, just nudging it around her plate. Every time Derek's voice rose, she flinched almost imperceptibly, then pasted on a smile when she noticed me watching. After dinner, Derek stood up, poured himself another bourbon, and wandered down the hallway toward my office. That room had once been Margaret's favorite place in the house. She'd designed it herself, built-in bookshelves, a large oak desk that had belonged to her father, and a glass front cabinet displaying her most treasured possessions. Margaret had inherited her grandfather's watch collection, dozens of vintage timepieces dating from the 1920s through the 1960s. Some were valuable, others simply sentimental. She adored them. She used to take them out one by one, wind them carefully, and tell me the stories her grandfather shared about where each watch came from. After she died, I couldn't bring myself to change a thing in that room. The watches remained exactly where she'd left them. Sometimes I'd sit at her desk just to feel close to her again. Now Derek stood in front of the cabinet, his glass leaving a wet ring on the polished surface. He stared at the watches with an intensity that made my stomach not these worth. "Anything?" "Hi," he asked. Without looking back, I stopped in the doorway. They belonged to my wife. It was her grandfather's collection. "Yeah, but what would they sell for?" He leaned closer to the glass. "That Omega there vintage Seamaster, you could get $5,000 easy. And is that a Rolex Submariner? That's at least 15, maybe 20,000. There? Not for sale? He turned and smiled, but there was calculation behind his eyes. I'm just saying you've got, 40 watches in there? You could be sitting on millions, and they're just collecting dust. They're staying right where they are. Sarah appeared at the end of the hallway. Derek, please, let's go back to the living room. I made coffee. He ignored her. I'm trying to help. You're retired, living on a fixed income. Margaret's been gone 2 years. She's not using these anymore. Could sell the collection, invest properly. Make the money work instead of locking it away like some museum exhibit. They are not for sale, I repeated, my voice turning cold, the kind of tone that usually shut conversations down. But Derek kept going. You know what your problem is? You're stuck in the past. Margaret is dead. She's not coming back. These watches don't bring her back. They're just things. And things are meant to be used or sold, not worshipped. Sarah made a small, broken sound, like she'd been struck. I stepped fully into the room. I think it's time for you to leave. Oh, come on. Derek waved dismissively. Don't be so sensitive. I'm giving you financial advice. I work in tech, understand investments and liquidity. You're being emotional over objects. Derek, Sarah said, her voice tight and desperate. Please, let's just go. He spun on her. You always do this. Every time I try to help your father see reason, you undermine me. You always take his side. Maybe if you've actually supported your husband for once, we wouldn't be in the situation we're in. What situation? I asked. Derek's jaw tightened. He drained his glass, then walked past me and poured another drink. His hand trembled as he did it. Oh, nothing. Forget it. But I'd seen Sarah's face, the fear in it. It's the way her hands were shaking. It's been a father long enough to recognize when my child was terrified. Sarah, honey, is everything okay? It's fine, she said quickly. Everything's fine. Derek's. Just stressed about work? Stressed about work, Greg laughed, but there was no humor in it. He took a long drink. That's one way to put it. Derek, please, Sarah whispered. He ignored her, turning to me. You want to know what situation? We're $40,000 in debt. Credit cards, personal loans, maxed out everything. And your daughter here thinks? We should just keep making minimum payments like good little citizens while the interest buries us alive. I looked at Sarah's shoes, staring at the floor. How did you reach $40,000 in debt? I asked carefully. Life, Derek snapped. Living expenses? Trying to maintain a certain standard. Investing in opportunities. It costs money to make money. What opportunities? It's crypto, day trading, NFTs, diversified or fully, which would be paying off if Sarah hadn't freaked out and made. We pull everything out early. We lost 30 grand because she couldn't handle a little volatility. My daughter had finally looked up, and I could see tears in her eyes. You told me they were sure things. You said we couldn't lose. You'd spent our emergency fund, our savings, everything, because you have to spend money to make money. His voice rose. But you're just like your father, emotionally attached to every dollar, too scared to take risks. That's why Ha's sitting on a fortune in watches and living like he's broke. Not broke, I said quietly. I'm not selling Margaret's watches. Derek's eyes narrowed. Not even to help your daughter. Not even when we're drowning here. You'd rather let those watches sit in a cabinet than help Sarah pay off her debt? It's not my debt. She's your daughter, and you're her husband. You're supposed to take care of her, not gamble away your savings, and then expect me to bail you out. Derek took a step toward. You're sitting on $250,000 in watches. Could wipe out our debt hand. Still have money left over, but yeah, I won't. Because you're selfish. You're clinging to a dead woman's stuff while her living daughter suffers. Derek, stop, Sarah said, her voice breaking. Please, let's just go home. No, has spun toward her. Sick of this. Sick of you being too weak to ask him for what we need. I'm sick of you making the bad guy when I'm trying to save your marriage. Save our future by throwing our money away on cryptocurrency, I asked. His face wintered. It's not throwing money away. It's investing. But you wouldn't understand that, because you're old and scared and stuck in the past. Just like margaritas, Sarah gasped. Don't talk about Mimethur. Why not? She was the same way. It's probably where you get it from. Hoarding old junk like it means something. Refusing to accept that Thorold has moved on. I felt my hands belinto fists. You need to leave now. Or what? Derek laughed. You'll make me, old man. I could snap you in half. Derek? Sarah's voice was sharp with fear. Spud was moving toward the office again, toward the watch cabinet. You know what? Fine. You won't help us willingly, so I'll help myself. Consider it. Sarah's inheritance just early. He grabbed the cabinet handle. Don't touch that, I said. He yanked the door open. The little brass key had been in the lockback as I'd been in there yesterday, winding the watches like Margaret Usetto do. He reached for the Rolex Submariner. I crossed the room faster than I'd moved in years and grabbed his wrist. I said, don't touch it. For a moment, we stood there, his wrist in my hand, both of us breathing hard. I could smell the bourbon on his breath, see thirst, blood vessels in his eyes. As clues. I could see that my son-in-law was drunk, had probably been drinking since morning. Then Sarah was there trying to pull Derek away. Please, both of you. Stop. This isn't worth it. Derek jerked his arm free from my grip. You're choosing stuff over family. You're choosing dead memories over your living daughter. I'm not choosing anything. I'm refusing to enable your gambling addiction by selling my late wife's possessions. Gambling addiction? Derek's voice went up an octave. I didn't have a gambling addiction. I'm mad at some risky investments that didn't pan out. That's called business. It's called addiction when you've lost $40,000 and still think you're right. Head grabbed the wine glass off the desk. Theon, he'd been drinking from during dinner. For a second, I thought he was just going to take another drink. But his arm came up, and the glass flew toward my head. I ducked. The crystal exploded against the wall behind me, spraying wine and shards everywhere. Sarah screamed. Derek stood, their chest heaving, looking shocked at what he'd just done, and his face hardened. You've made me do that. You've pushed me. Amadeo throw a glass at me, you insulted. Called me an addict. Refused to help your own daughter. His voice was rising with each sentence, justifying Bildinga's story where he was the victim. You're turning her against me, just like you've always done. Since day one, you've never thought I was good enough for Sarah. Because you're not, I said. Now wasp past, caring about diplomacy. You're a drunk who gambles away your money and throws things when you don't get your way. Dad, please, Sarah said. But she wasn't looking at me. She was looking at Derek with naked fear. That's when it clicked. The way she'd flinched at dinner, the makeup around her eyes, how thin she'd gotten, the careful way Chas spoke around him. Kazzy hit you? I asked her directly. What? Oh, but she'll meet my eyes. Don't you, Dea? Derek said, his voice dangerous. Don't you dare put that in her head. Not putting anything in her head. I'm asking my daughter a question. I kept my eyes on Sarah. Has Derek ever hurt you? Tears were streaming down her fuse now. It's not what you think. It's never what I think, Derek said. And there was something ugly in his voice. It's never my fault. Gosh. I lose my temperons, throw a pillow, and suddenly a mon-abuser. I shove her one time during an argument, and she acts like I beth her. The room went very quiet. You shoved her, I said. Derek seemed to realize his mistake. It wasn't like that. She was in my face, screaming at me about the money, and I just pushed her away. That's all. She fell. It was an accident. I broke my wrist. Sorrel whispered. I felt something cold set line my chest. When, 3 months ago, I told you I fell off a curb. 3 months. 3 months she'd been lying to protect him, 0.3 months of wearing long sleeves, even in warm weather. 3 months of buying too thin, too careful, too afraid. You're taking this the wrong way, Derek said quickly. Sarah, tell him. Tell him it was an accident. But Sarah isn't looking at him anymore. She was looking at me, and something had broken open in her face. He took my phone, she said, her voice small. After the rest, he said it was to protect me from making impulsive decisions, but hex it constantly. He monitors my location. I can't talk to anyone without him knowing. She's exaggerating. He took me credit cards, took me off our bank account. I don't have access to any money. I have to ask him for everything, because you were being irresponsible with spending. I was buying groceries, Sarah said, and her voice was getting stronger. I was buying groceries, and he accused me of wasting money. He said, I needed to learn to budget better, so he took my cards. That was 8 months ago. Haven't had any money of my own in 8 months. I looked at Derek, and he must have seen something in my face. Bakaza took a step back. You need to leave, I told him. Right now? Sarah comes with him. No. I said, Sarah stays here, you leave. She's my wife. She's my daughter. And you just admitted to shoving her hard enough to break her wrist, to controlling her money and her phone, and you threw a glass at me. The police will be very interested in all of that. His eyes went wide. You wouldn't. He pulled out my phone. Try me, Sarah. Head turned to her, and his voice changed, went soft and pleading. Baby, you know I love you. This is all a misunderstanding. Your dad's twisting and wiring. Come on with me and we'll talk about it. Just us. Sarah looked at Atham for a long moment, and she pulled her phone from her pocket, the one he'd been monitoring, and held it out to me. Call them, she said. Call. The police Derek's face changed, a pleading venge replaced by cold fury. You'll regret this, both of you. Those watches, I'll sue for them community property. Sarah's entitled to half of everything you own. Those watches were Margaret's and irritated. Before I even met her, there's a private property. I was already diddling. And you're drunk. You've admitted to domestic violence, and you just assaulted me with a thrown glass. I think a restraining order is going to be a lot easier to get than any claim on my property. He looked at Sarah one more time. You're really doing this? Aruka Singh. Him over me. I'm choosing me. Sarah said quietly. Tarek's mouth had penned, closed. Then he grabbed his coat from the chair and stormed toward Theodore. He stopped in the doorway, turned back. You'll both be sorry. I gave her everything. Everything. And this is how she repays me. Then he was gone. I heard his car start in the driveway. It's a screech of tires as he pulled out too fast. It's a 911 operator. Was asking me questions. I explained calmly what had happened. Gave them Derek's license plate number from memory. Mentioned Hugh was driving drunk. They said an officer will be here within 10 minutes and tow call back if Derek returned. When I hung up, Sarah was sitting on the floor, her back against the wall, sobbing. I sat down next to her and she collapsed against me, the way she used to when she was little and had skinned her knee or had a nightmare. I'm so sorry, Dad, she kept saying. I'm so sorry. I should have told you. I should have left tea earlier. I was so stupid. You're not stupid, I told her, stroking her hair the way Margaret used to. You're brave. You got out. I didn't get out. You, David? No, honey, you made the choice. He just held the phone. We sat there on Thefler, surrounded by broken glass and spilled wine, and I held my daughter while she cried. Outside, I could hear a siren getting closer. The police took statements, photographed the broken glass and the wine stain on the wall, took pictures of Sarah's wrist. Wick still had a slight bend to it. From healing wrong, they'd already pulled Derek over 2 miles away, arrested him for DUI. They said they'd add assault charges based on our statements. One of the officers, a woman named Martinez, who seemed to understand these situations better than her partner, sat with Sarah at the kitchen table and talked to her gently about domestic violence resources, shelters if she needed them, legal aid for divorce proceedings. She gave Sarah her card and told her to call any time. After they left, Sarah and I cleaned up the broken glass together. She insisted on helping, even though her hands were shaking. When we're done, she stood in the doorway off Margaret's office, looking at Throch's cabinet. Mom loved those watches, she said softly. Okay, she did. Used to sit in here with her when I was little. She'd let me hold them sometimes, tell them the stories, I remember. Sarah was keep for a moment. Derek said I was just like Mom. He meant it as an insult, but I'm glad. I want to be like her. She was. Strong she was. And so are you. I didn't feel strong. I feel stupid for staying so long. Stayed because you made a commitment and you wanted to honor it. That's not stupid. That's loyal. He's the one who broke faith. Jettered. To look at me? What happens now? Now you stay here as long as you need. We'll get you a good lawyer. File for divorce. Get a restraining order. You'll heal. You'll figure out who you were without him. What if I can't afford a lawyer? Don't have any money, Dad. He took everything. I'll pay for it. I can't ask you to do that. I smiled at her. You didn't ask, I offered. That's what these watches are for. Serenados sit in a cabinet forever, but too abused when they're needed. Your mother would sell every single one of them herself if it meant keeping you safe. Sarah started crying again, but this time it was different. Quieter, almost relieved. That night, she slept in Harold's room. I heard her get up once around 3 o'clock in the morning and I found her in Margaret's office. sitting at the desk with one of the watches in her hands. The old Omega. The one Derek had priced at $5,000. "Grandpa bought this one in Paris," she said, without looking up. "In 1952. Mom said he wore it on his wedding day." "He did. Tell me the story again." So I did. I told her about Margaret's grandfather, who'd served in World War I and had been stationed in Paris briefly after the liberation. How he'd walked past a watch shop, had seen the Omega in the window and knew he had tow-have it even though it cost 2 months' pay. How he wore it when he married Margaret's grandmother in 1953, and then on every important day after that. Sir listened, running her fingers over thick crystal face. "And when I was done, she'll carefully place it back in the cabinet. I'm going to be okay, aren't I?" Shisked. "You're going to be better, Thanake. You're going to be free." The next few weeks were hard. Derek, Kay led constantly from different numbers, trying to apologize, then to threaten, then to manipulate. Sarah's lawyer, Philly Day, restraining order, and the call stopped. The divorce proceedings started. Derek's lawyer tried Torg for some of Margaret's watches as marital property, but my lawyer shut that down fast. Derek lost his job. Turned out day drinking at the office isn't compatible with employment. He moved back to whatever city he'd come from originally. Sarah's lawyer said had signed the divorce papers without Event reading them, probably too broke to fight anymore. Sarah moved back home. It was supposed to be temporary, just until she got back on her feet, but I didn't mind. The house felt less empty with her there. She got a job at a local nonprofit, started seeing a therapist, reconnected with friends she'd lost touch with during her marriage. Sometimes I'd find her in Margaret's office, looking at the watches. She'd take them out one by one, wind them, put them, back, doing what her mother used to do. 6 months after Thanksgiving, on what would have been Margaret's birthday, Sarah came to me with a proposal. "I want to learn about the watches," she said. "Really learn their history, how they work, what makes them valuable. I want to document all of Grandpa's stories before we forget them. Eventually, when I'm ready, I'd like to have them not to sell, just to keep the tradition going." I looked at my daughter, who'd gotten her color back, who'd put one white, who smiled. "Icily again? Your mother would love that." "I know," Sarah said. "I think that's why I want to do it." So, we started. Every Sunday, we'd sit in that office, and I'd tell her everything I remembered Margaret telling. Sarah took notes, photographed each watch, researched their histories online. It became our thing, our way of keeping Margaret alive between us. One Sunday, almost a year after Thatterable Thanksgiving, Sarah picked up Omega Seamaster, the one, Derek, had said was worth $5,000. "This one should have mine someday," she said. "Grandpa wore it to stand up for what was right, to start a new chapter. That feels fitting. That feels perfect," I agreed. She looked at me then, really looked at me. "Thank you, Dad, for that night, for standing up to him, for not making me go back. You don't have to thank me for that." "Yes, I do. Some parents don't. Some friends tell their daughters to work eat out, to think of the marriage, to stop causing problems. You chose me always. Eat out every time. Always you." Sarah put the watch back in its place, and Wes sat there in Margaret's office, surrounded by timepieces that had witnessed decades of family history, each one a small mechanical heart marking. The moments that mattered. People ask me sometimes why I won't sell the collection, especially now that I'm getting older and Sarah's doing well on her own. They're worth significant money, more than $250,000 probably. I could do a lot with that money, but I keep them because they're not really about the money. They're about continuity, about the moments in life when you have to decide who you arraigned, what you stand for. Margaret's grandfather decided he was a man who'd fight for freedom and love, Greta decided. She was a woman who'd value Bodhi and history and connection. And that Thanksgiving night, I decided I was a father who'd protect his daughter no matter the cost. The watches mark all Afto's moments. They sit in their cobonate mechanical hearts still beating, bearing witness to the fact that some things are worth more than their price tag. Some things are worth fighting for, standing up for, refusing to surrender. Like my daughter's safety, like her freedom, like her right to live without fear. Derek was wrong about a lot of things, but he was especially wrong about this. Those watches? Aren't just gathering dust? They're doing exactly what they're meant to do. They're keeping time. Marking the moments that matter, reminding us that most valuable things we own aren't possessions at all. They're the people, love, and the courage to stop protect.